All right. Are we live?
Howdy. I think so, maybe. People in the chat, tell us if we're live.
Yes.
Anton, I can't see you. Okay, there we go.
I can hear you, Steve. I cannot see you. So if anyone
Likewise.
has any support for our platform, let me know. Here we go. I can see.
Hey, everybody.
Let's kick it off.
As if by magic. Cool. We have a lot of people from a lot of different places, which is amazing.
I think people are excited about design, AI, and creating actual applications all in one. And I am too. So I'm looking forward to this.
For sure. So, yeah, I mean, welcome everyone. Just to give a super brief overview before we do kind of detailed intros and we dive into any details. We've got Anton and myself from Lovable today, and Steve from Builder.io. And we're super excited to launch like a completely new workflow that takes you from Figma to be able to create a full stack app with just a few clicks. And so today we're going to, like, first of all, talk about ourselves a little bit more, do some demos of what we've built together, talk about some of the kind of bigger workflow challenges that we see, like not just with what we've built, but I guess just with teams in general and just with building tech. Give a little bit of a sneak peek into the future of what we're thinking about building next. And also go through some live Q&A as well. So as we talk through, think about questions for Q&A towards the end as well. But let's start off with intros, actually. Steve, do you want to kick us off with a more detailed intro from your side?
Totally. Yes. Hey, everybody. I'm Steve, co-founder, CEO of Builder.io. We make like a Figma to code and Figma to like headless CMS style product. Super excited to integrate with Lovable. So now you can go Figma to full stack app. And we really specialize in trying to nail those design details. So rather than taking a screenshot, low fidelity, the goal is with a little bit of setup to your Figma design, you can go 100% pixel perfect import and turn them into real applications. So excited to show you more. And it's a really cool demo of something we have coming up and how we're thinking about the future later. So stick around for that.
I'm Anton. I'm the founder of Lovable, and I'm actually been a fan of a lot of the things Steve has built open source since quite a few years. And I think this was part of inspiring me to build what was the very first like version or like a prequel to Lovable, which was GPT Engineer. It's command line interface where you prompt and you get an app. It was like one of the first ones, got super popular. But now we got so far since then. And before the code generation, my background is training deep learning models like back in 2014, doing physics, algorithmic trading, a lot of different things. Most importantly, collecting talented people into a team to ship software.
Cool. And I'm Nad. So my background's in design, but I've been designing and building for like the last 15, 20 years, like since I was a kid pretty much. And so I fell into design because I wanted to figure out like what I would make before I would make it. But I've always built whatever I've designed. And so in a lot of ways, like what we're talking about today is like me, it's almost therapy. Like it's decades of having this awful handoff for my entire career, where I would design things in Figma once and then need to recreate it in some other syntax and some other environment for literally no good reason when we have computers, and computers should be good at doing that for us. And so like super excited about what we're building and what we can do today, basically. But before we actually talk about what we're building, Anton, I had a question for you, which is that, so Anton, Steve, we launch features, products all the time. Normally, when you launch something, you're looking for maximum hype and you're trying to think about like, how do we communicate what we're doing? But Anton, you didn't do that yesterday. Instead, the first thing you did was you tweeted, designers are some of the smartest people that you know. And so I was curious, because we have a lot of designers in the audience, if you could expand on that a little bit about where that came from.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's very hard for me to do design personally. I think Nad knows this. And I tried a few times. What I've noticed is that you have to have so many different things in your head about if you're designing a product of how the user is going to interact with this. And even more importantly, you have to like have this ability to magically not just evaluate what looks good and what works, but have that generative ability. And yeah, I'm just super impressed by designers in general, and I'm lucky to work with some.
And Steve, would you have anything to add across that front?
Yeah, I mean, of course. So I probably should have mentioned my intro. So my background, I originally, I started my career as a designer. People know me for coding these days, but I literally only got into code because I had the same struggle Nad had. I would design something and it'd be coded and it wouldn't look right. And like, I would try to describe what's wrong. It's like, well, 2 pixels here, 2 pixels there. And then she'd just be like, yeah. I mean, nobody's gonna notice that. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like those little things add up. And this just looks like a disaster now. And they could not see like what was wrong. Like it was just like a different way of seeing the world or something. I couldn't figure it out. And so out of just complete frustration, or maybe even like a perfectionistic maniac, I started to learn some code. I expected learning to code wouldn't be as hard as other things I had learned. Like I'd learned like a big chunk of the Adobe Creative Suite. You know, I could do the Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects, and like, how hard could coding be? Coding was a whole different thing. I was like, wait a second, that was really hard. Even just starting with CSS, syntax, all this stuff. But I chugged away at it. I probably would have never started had I known how hard it would have been to learn. But took it a piece of time, fixing other people's, fixing their code to match the design better, and then just got more and more carried away. If a tool like Lovable existed back then, I would have never needed to care. But the thing that about like coding myself when AI could do it, and that even now today, I have the full coding skills and I value them and I use them. And I think AI plus coding is even bigger. Like whatever skills you have plus AI become that much more magnified. But I've seen this interesting conversation come up a lot lately too around this topic, which is like, I can have AI generate a UI that's working right now. Do I need design? And a lot of people, there's a lot of commentary on this, but what's interesting is the overall thing I hear is maybe for the first prototype, you don't, if AI can make it good enough, but for production, you do. You need to have that brand, that detail, that perfection. That's what makes your product actually stand out, not look like every other product. But then the question becomes, I was on this stream like a week ago, and literally one of the people on the stream is like, okay, I built this app. Like they used Cursor, and then it looked bad, and they made a Figma design to make it look good. And they're like, well, how do I? They don't really connect. I don't know what to do. They tried like a screenshot. The screenshot wasn't quite right. It got a little closer. That helped. And so that's why I think it's really exciting, this idea of, and we've talked to a lot of people about this, and we hear this a lot, this idea of like the perfect world is one where I have an AI tool where I can just get my ideas to be real, but I'm not gated away from the code. I can go to the code. I can go into GitHub. I can pull down into Cursor, whatever, and modify. The engineers can engineer. And the designer can pick up where the AI and engineering left off, make the designs, make the improvements, and push that back. If your designer is in the design tool and your engineers in their engineering tools, same workflow, unchanged. And then you now have this new middle ground that everyone can participate in. If you're a designer, you can experiment with functionality with AI. If you're a developer, you can get to functionality faster with AI. I can code. I still have Cursor, Lovable, and other things build me the apps and prototypes fast. It's so much more rewarding to get your hands on something so users and you can experience it rather than like wireframes. Wireframes are cool, but they don't tell you the whole story. And I've built many things from a beautiful design that actually didn't feel right. And being able to get to the feel point faster and iterate faster, I think is pretty monumental. But it's not just devs and designers who could be in there. It can be your product manager, your marketer. Anyone can use AI. You just choose your own workflow. It's kind of a new world. I'll get off my soapbox on that, but I think this stuff's really exciting.
It reminds me of, I don't know if you've read, do you know Scott Belsky, who's the Adobe CPO? He has this concept of luxury software, which I love as a term. So like for everyone in the audience, if you've not read this, the thesis is basically almost following from fashion, where like in fashion, you have like fast fashion, you've got, like garments can come in every sort of shape and size. Some are mass produced, whatever, but you still have like luxury fashion, right? It's still these fashion houses that are constantly pushing the boundary, and it's artisanal almost, whilst also being, commercial and solving all these problems. And the thesis is that we're on the same tipping point for software. And so this notion of luxury software that's handcrafted, that's, truly lovable, which are actually where the sort of Lovable namesake comes from. It feels like we can sort of finally put this in designers' hands, which I'm super excited about.
It's the missing link.
But awesome. So let's maybe just talk about some of the workflow challenges as well before we sort of look at the tooling that we've built as well. So I mean, maybe Steve, if you want to jump in first, like from your perspective, like what are the major workflow challenges or inefficiencies that you see as well, I guess, in teams or with individuals today?
Totally. So the biggest gap I tend to see, and you see this most starkly if you do like, I went from doing startups to being acquired by a much larger company and then back to startups. And the difference is like striking. The startup moves super fast. You just code things up, you test things, you get input from users, and the product just accelerates and grows so fast. At the large company, no matter what the company will say, they will usually say, oh, we're agile, we use sprints. They're totally not agile. They use mini waterfalls, or they break a waterfall into these weekly cadences. At this company, I have never spent so many years of my life building things that nobody wanted and never succeeded, because we spent 6 months planning, 6 months building, 6 months testing, and after 18 months, actually nobody wanted it in the first place. As opposed to, on the flip side, like the more kind of startup mentality, which is like, let's find a true MVP. Like big companies talk about MVP, but they often, what they think they're saying, what they're actually saying are often quite different. A true MVP that startups usually excel at is one where like real users, like maybe within a few days, we're testing it, we're touching the product update or new product internally, and then maybe a few more days real end users are. And that's where you get those tight feedback loops that make sure you're going the right direction from the start. Now, there's two kind of ways of building. Is like, one is the kind of like existed forever, and one is kind of new with AI. The one that's existed forever is pretty waterfall-y, right? Design is like product manager making specs is a separate process, like thrown over the fence to design and then thrown over the fence to engineering. And when it's finally built is when you finally realize like, oh, this actually doesn't feel very good, or our users didn't actually want this. Now, what's interesting right now is with AI, a lot of these individual steps can be accelerated, but the question is, how do you tie them all together? So a basic example, you have a net new startup idea and you don't code. You can just go to Lovable and build your app end to end and ship it to users. Incredible. What if you're Apple? You're a huge company. And what if you need to update something existing? Or what if you have specific brand requirements? You have to look a certain way. You have all the designs. Or you're any other company where ideas don't necessarily start in just plain text. Ideas have a couple components. But the biggest one is like they have a brand and a design behind it. It has to look a certain way. That's where I think like if you're trying to use Lovable outside of a net new project and a new prototype, y'all are welcome to disagree with me on any of this. This is my understanding from a distance. You're going to need to figure out how to bring in the sort of like creative assets and design library into that process. And I think the worlds that we want to solve for is the one where I want to create something that's got to look exactly a certain way to be exactly used by my company, my brand, my use case. And I want these things to be seamless. You know, I don't want AI to be over here and the AI can't make it back into my design. I don't want these things disconnected and fragmented. I just want to build something. I want to make it look better in Figma. I want to bring the Figma updates over and continue to extend. That's, I think, the dream. And that can, I think, get us from this idea of like waterfalls that we call agile to actually being agile, to actually like getting ideas tested, try them on users, iterate fast, and be sure you're building exactly what people want the way they need it, not just theoretically, but actually hands-on. We see it come to life in front of us. And I think there's more to prove out over time regarding like AI really accelerating the entire product development process at all sizes, all scales, all use cases. Lovable has already unlocked so much. Connecting Figma unlocks even more, and I think we'll continue to grow. I think it's really exciting. I'll pause there and let you all get your input and disagree with me if you like.
Good points.
No,
no disagreements here.
No disagreements here. I think the only thing I'm kind of reflecting on is like I've built like entire design ops teams before. That, you know, several like super smart people like hacking away at this problem, grinding on this for, you know, tens to hundreds of hours, thousands of hours over time. And even though I love those people, some of them are probably in the audience, like we could probably agree that a lot of that work was like in reality busy work. It was like we made some decisions once, so we just need to translate it 100 times over to, you know, different platforms or different code bases or whatever, or different environments like Figma and let's say Lovable in this case. And so just super excited to eradicate all that busy work as well. And sort of keep people focused on, as you say, like the sort of value creation rather than just implementation. But cool. Let's just trying to think. Let's move on slightly. So, I mean, do we think this is the end of the design handoff? Like, is that what we think we have a shot at here? If we're saying that like waterfall sucks, and we have this product manager to design a waterfall, and then this product designer to engineer waterfall, like, do we think we can just kill this? Is that what we're saying?
I think like I'll say something about the handoffs. The most of the time spent on building a product is like communicating between the humans building the product and discovering what should it actually be. And many of those communications between humans is very like low bandwidth, and they are going to continue. So they are going to be these people collaborating. But now the low bandwidthness of like, oh, I have a document that explains my product idea, or I have a static website that explains it instead of something interactive you can actually touch and feel, are they're going to become much faster, and it's going to be instant soon. So then it's only going to be like human brain minds connected in a much more direct way. But no, the handoffs are still going to happen because the teams are collaborating.
Yeah, if I could add anything, I think the thing that, like, in general, I don't think an AI strategy that makes sense is to rethink everything. It's more about like accelerate what you're doing, make those handoffs smaller, make them more frequent and more rapid, more granular too, as opposed to like re-architect how you build product from scratch. With only one caveat is, I tend to find like one problem with teams as they grow and as they plan is, I think it's easy to have, like, we all know design by committee, right? Everybody gets in a room, they all talk about how to make something better, and it just gets worse. The more you intellectualize things, sometimes you kind of abstract away from the actual user experience, and you have this list of criteria, and it just kind of falls apart. A lot of design by committee is also very additive. People rarely can advocate for subtracting very effectively as well as you can rationalize adding, and you end up with this mess, and it gets very complex. It's very hard to suggest to people like, let's actually not do all these good ideas so we can get user input. And people will often just intuit, well, we know what the users will say. That is clearly missing things, and they're going to tell us things are missing, and it's going to look bad. The reality is it won't look bad. It'd be very good. People love to test new things. You can have a beta testing group. But the thing that I think can change when you change the way you do these handoffs is the fact that when you can make them so granular and fast, you can get that user feedback fast. And if anything really changes, my hope is people actually adopt that very iterative style for more things and more contexts. I think the experience of just using Lovable from scratch and seeing how fast ideas can come to life changes the way you think a bit. And then the next problem to solve is, how do I really productionize this? Full production designs. Now I got to go and hook up Supabase to make it have a real backend and take it incrementally. And the irony about this, in my opinion, is, I feel so silly saying this, but I recently, I was advocating, our company's growing, and I was advocating for this type of style. And some of the pushback was, well, that doesn't seem to scale. And I was like, have people scaled this? So I start asking ChatGPT, like, how do people scale this for iterative mindset? And they're like, it sounds like you're talking about agile development. I'm like, no, it's not agile development. I've seen agile is like you do sprints, but it's really just those mini and then like ChatGPT like argued with me as like, basically, it's really hard to get AI to disagree with you and disagree with others in the world. But if you just ask it and say, how many companies say they do agile development but don't, it'll be like most of them. Because things like sprints and stuff are not actual agile development. Supposed to be that rapidly iterative like style. And so I went and I read the whole like Scrum book, the Red Book, which I feel so cringy saying because I just hate talking about Scrum and things like that. And like, I feel like people aren't really listening to the words in that book, because all they're talking about is using a style like this. And I think the struggle people have just had forever is having the right tooling and workflow to support that, and having the right mindset as a business of just user feedback matters more than anything. Your ideas internally are cool, but not as cool as real user feedback. And so if anything changes, I hope that changes. We'll see it. We'll demo it. I see people are itching for demos. We'll jump into that soon. But
yeah, I think we might be our own worst enemy by enjoying talking about this stuff. So we'll I feel like maybe we skip ahead to demos, and then we can talk more about this afterwards with Q&A as well.
Totally. Who's got first demo? Remind me. Am I above first on demo?
Yep. Yeah. Do you want to show us the workflow taking this from Figma to Lovable?
I sure do. Okay, give me 1 second to make sure I have the right screen open, and I'll screen share.
My camera towards the monitor right behind me, then I think we could potentially get another screen on here. But let's try the real way first.
I'm back. It says we can see my screen.
Oh, amazing!
All right,
We're gonna get a demo, everybody. Cool. All right, why don't I kick this off? We can show some cool stuff. So here I've got a design of this e-commerce landing page. And you'll see a couple of things. So actually, I'll go all the way from scratch here. So obviously, it's just a normal Figma canvas, all kinds of design iterations, ugly stuff, whatever kind of stuff. And so what I'll do is I'm going to assume that I'm going to create a brand new project. So I'll just select this entire page. I'll launch the Builder plugin. Pay attention to if Builder warns you about anything. This is a much more advanced import than just say like a screenshot. It'll actually pull all of the design tokens, auto layout, specific images, layers, all that stuff. There were some constraints though. Use auto layout as much as possible. That gives the AI much better guidance on what the actual hierarchy should be. It can guess really well sometimes, and it needs some help sometimes, without a doubt. In this case, it says this is a large selection. Large selections could be hit or miss. In this case, I actually know this one works pretty well. And you can import in either what we call easy mode or precise mode. Precise mode is if you really have set up your design file really, really precisely. It really just means you used auto layout throughout to make this as code ready as possible. I would generally say aspire to that ultimately. Don't start with precise mode though. Easy mode does a lot of automatic corrections for you. It doesn't assume everything's set up perfectly. It's perfect auto layout. It doesn't even necessarily need auto layout at all. And then when you're ready, just hit export to code. So what's cool here is it'll start breaking this down, and I'll talk through kind of what's happening here. On a technical level, the first thing that happens is we actually run an AI model to figure out what in here should be images. So there's a lot of cases in a design where you might have this logo that maybe has a bunch of different typography, some iconography, and that should all be one like SVG image in the export. It's very, very common. A lot of times you'll have like a hero section with a lot of overlapping layers that when it becomes code, those should be squashed into one image with text in the foreground. The text should not be an image, but all the shapes and all these sort of assetry should be as part of the image. And then in other cases, it'll break down and decide what should be using Flexbox, CSS Grid, various different responsive patterns, like should the header look in mobile. Okay, and so here we go. When we use easy mode, we always get two options. A little secret is the top one uses more heavy use of AI, and the bottom one uses a little bit more of an algorithmic approach. It's a little bit of a test we use. We look at the data to optimize. This one looks a bit better. I like how the header is spanning all the way across. I like how mobile looks better. This looks like a proper mobile header, and I think the responsiveness looks pretty spot on, especially how things get centered. And so pick your favorite and just click on it. And then you have a couple options, CLI to sync to code.
And Steve, do you want to zoom in? Is that possible?
Let me try this.
In the Figma. Yeah, it looks good. Let's go.
Are you able to see when I zoom in? Does it say open and Lovable super huge now? Cool.
It's too huge now, yes.
So here in this case, you've got a few options, but we're going to open in Lovable because Lovable is what's going to be able to turn this into a full stack application completely from scratch. In this case, what we're doing is we're converting to the stack that Lovable uses. So under the hood, Lovable uses, in my opinion, like the most obvious, best go-to tech stack these days. React, Tailwind, Shadcn, good icon libraries. Like it's a really, what I think is really awesome about Lovable compared to other tools on the market is it picks a great stack. It can build the application end to end, including the front end and back end. Everything is completely customizable and editable in code. And then because it specializes in that one stack, it can deliver on that extremely, extremely well. You'll get launched into Lovable. It could take a split second, and then you'll see the files. So actually, while this is spinning up, we can take a look at some of the files that were generated for us. This is just a preview of a few, like our hero, our header, etc. And then if we switch back into the preview mode, we'll be able to see our beautiful site here. Welcome to your blank app. Oh, do we hit a bug? The demo gods here. Let's try this again. In worst case, we can actually regenerate that. Let's go generation number 2. You can always go back and redo steps. There's something extra special about demoing where it's kind of like, what is it? Like Schrodinger's cat. Things are broken and fixed at the same time, but if a real user uses it, it's working. And if a demo user uses it, it's not working. One other funny side note, I've demoed Builder and other things a million times. The funny thing is the amount of times that other products break in my demo randomly and only during the demo is vast. I've used products like Cloudinary, super like big CRM products, and for some reason I can't demo because Salesforce suddenly doesn't work somehow magically for demo. But anyway, we're spinning up the preview, and the beautiful part is, for those familiar with Lovable or not, you can chat on the left. You can chat to do anything from like fixing up the design. So we'll see here in a second that we can do things like design iteration. Did something not import perfectly? Remember, the design to code process is not a 100% perfect every time process. Anytime AI is involved, you might want to do some tweaks, and tweaks are part of the process. It's normal and it's a good thing to do. But you can not only go in and start cleaning that up. I'll show you some prompts in a second, but you can also go in and add functionality. Here we go. Our fun stuff. Oh my God. Well, I have a backup, everybody. This is one I did about 5 minutes before the live stream. So this is what we're supposed to see. And what's cool here is we've got everything here. Everything import as expected, including all of the images. If you've used any kind of screenshot to code, you'll know that imagery won't come in. Icons will kind of be invented on the fly. And everything's nice and responsive. And I can come in and make tweaks however I like. In fact, if you change your mind on something and say like, I'll do this. Add a second button to the hero. The cool part, as we know about generative AI, is it can be creative. It can paint within the lines or outside the lines. And so even saying something as vague as add a second button to the hero, it can generally figure out what you want out of that. It'll usually give the second button either the same styling as the first button, so reusing your styling, design tokens, etc., or it will give it sort of secondary button styling that matches your aesthetic, your design tokens, etc., pretty accurately. The nice part about this, as this is generating, is we pull in the design tokens directly from Figma. So it actually is automatically using our secondary button styling. So it knows that the primary button styling has certain design tokens, and the secondary buttons, it pulls from other parts. This button component was reused here, and it takes those tokens directly from Figma. So even if you iterate in here, it's going to reuse your systems you already have in place from Figma to as high a fidelity as you have things set up. The cool part is, because I'm reusing this one that I had messed with previously, I also did a couple things. I gave it a prompt a minute ago to say when I hit sign in, show a sign in modal. I connected it to Supabase. I actually don't have a Supabase account in this project, but you can actually sign in. I added a quick sale page. The cool part is how you can literally just start building the application right here from scratch. We can show importing a bunch of other variety of things. I think we'll show a CRM dashboard soon. But that's a quick look. And the nice part, I'll show one last thing. We can flip over and move on to additional demos. The really nice thing is this is a well-structured project under the hood. And so the cool part is things like this header, this footer, this hero, these buttons are all reusable components. So if I add other pages, like I just quickly said, make a sale page, I told it don't add anything yet, it already knows, yeah, the header goes above the routing, the footer goes below the routing, new pages show in between. It automatically can set up an application for you. I'll pause there so we can move on to other demos. But
do you want to do one more thing though, Steve?
Sure.
Do you want to share your screen again?
I sure can.
So you just showed us taking a very nice Figma design into this editor mode where you're building the full stack web app. If you go up in the right corner, you can like from the Figma design, what you can literally do is to get here and then click publish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Deploy.
Let's make it a live site.
And wait until this is deployed on the edge globally with low latency. Yes. You can now get it out and click send a link over to your friends that is actually a perfectly working website. So I think this end-to-end flow is actually super fast and smooth. This is like this you can do it regardless if you want to add backend capabilities like we do with Supabase and you did with the login. This works on anyone's device with one click. So
it's beautiful.
That's something I think like is huge for designers that want to create their personal website in Figma instead of creating their personal website with another tool.
Totally. Literally any use case, right? Build your website, build it out piece by piece and get it live. Build a prototype that you can actually put in users' hands. It's not locked away in something. And I think y'all probably show, but something I've experimented with is you can feed Lovable information about your own APIs that you've built and have it build applications with those. So maybe like, let's say you have an application, it's got a backend that's custom, but you have a front end that's kind of locked away and hard to update. It's not really have the AI tooling that can bring a designer right into it. You can make a little prototype, same data on the back end, totally just quickly prototypes UI at the front end. Try some user flows. It's sort of like Figma's prototyping that is just kind of click and see a new screen, but real. Get a feel, really feel and know what the right user experience is, and then work that into the final product. So you come at it with a much more informed position, maybe even user feedback before you do the painstaking work of the full production build in a large code base too.
And I have some questions which we're still having technical difficulties with our streaming platform, but Stefan, our expert producer, is DMing me with stuff. So just to reel off some questions from chat as well. So one is from Joshua Mitchell asking, my number one question is, what should we do in Figma to help the integration? Like, for example, should we use prototypes or make flows? Does the integration read it?
Great question. The biggest one is use auto layout, or rather, to put it differently, make your design responsive. The hardest part in design to code conversion is what people would call responsive inference. So it's making assumptions from the static design on what it should look like responsively. That could go anything from just kind of getting it wrong, that's not what I had in mind, to just breaking the layout. So auto layout is Figma's current feature set for making things actually kind of responsive and flow. So like resize the frame and make sure that things kind of adapt, things centered, left aligned the way you want. That's going to give you the absolute pixel perfect imports. Now there's two features coming soon here that I think are really exciting that are worth being aware of. One is prototype support. So we don't have that live yet, but we're looking to adding prototype support. So if you want to have a multi-screen flow, and just, imagine that you make a prototype of a full end-to-end app with multiple screens, you just import it to Lovable and it actually just stitches it together and becomes real. That's really exciting. You can use Builder's code output too if you need to output directly to code as well. Also download Lovable's code. Again, you kind of have the world of options to you. And the second thing that we're going to have coming soon is breakpoint support. So that's where you have multiple frames. I've got the desktop, tablet, and mobile frames. They all have design differences, and you'll just select them all and import them all together. So in that case, we can understand the inference right there based on what you have in front of you. I'll show another thing in a minute, but there's one other thing we have coming pretty soon that I can demo. But that's right now auto layout, in the future breakpoints and prototypes.
Can I make a contrarian point as well? It might be contrarian. Whenever I try to finesse responsive styling decisions in Figma, I generally make quite bad decisions because it's the spatial canvas. You zoom in too much, you zoom out too much, and you just kind of lose the sense of like actually how the decisions will translate. So like generally, like I make way better decisions in code, and so like at least for myself, I prefer just to get a super scrappy version, just something there, and then as Anton was showing, deploy to a real web page and just grab a real device, like seeing it on the physical device with the exact DPI, with different lighting, whatever. I think it's just how you make the best decisions. So like at least personally, I used to spend a lot of time trying to finesse this up front, but now I barely do. And so yeah, it feels super exciting to be able to work directly in the medium.
One thing I 100% agree with that, and that's where what we do internally in Builder is we actually often code first. AI might assist us. We do the first version in Lovable, the first version in Cursor, whatever, or just have what we call the ugly version. Just the engineer guesses at the UI for the feature. Because we just love to get our hands on it. And so what we'll do is we'll get our hands on it, and we'll iterate in the code, AI or just manually, and then get it to a point where the steps feel right together. And then we go to design. Design will usually take screenshots and then actually mock it up correctly. And then we'll bring that in. We'll have Builder generate the code. And if you saw my YouTube video, we have the CLI now too, where we're going to bring this to Lovable soon as well, where we can sort of resolve differences, meaning you kind of recreated a UI that's already a UI in your application. You can then sync the design and it'll find the hero and update the styling and all of that. So you can get to ugly but feels nice. Then in Figma, get to pixel perfect, and then AI can merge the pixel perfect details in. And now you have it feels nice and looks perfectly on brand.
Yep. Super
I'm
cool.
excited about that. We'll show one other thing too about a better process for getting from the kind of code to Figma, but I won't spoil that too much yet.
Cool. And then just some quick fire questions just to pick more from the chat. We don't need to index them too long, but people are asking, can you customize the stack pre-generation? Right now, the answer is no. To Steve's point earlier, how you were talking about how you were praising our like technology choices on like using React, specific icon libraries, etc. We've been super opinionated about this. So there's a bunch of decisions where we kind of want to make them for you. And over time, we might consider like more customizability in the stack. But right now, at least on our side, we're pretty like laser focused on just trying to make this stack work really, really well. I don't know if Steve, you'd have anything to add to that, or Anton.
No, I think it's great.
No?
In my opinion, there are so many places that AI can go awry that putting the right guardrails on like one stack that works really, really well is, in my opinion, the best way to make sure you just have a great experience and things work. The worst experience you can have with AI is AI derailing and you're stuck and now nothing updates correctly anymore. And so the more that you can make sure your system is well tuned for a really good, probably the default tech stack most people use these days for front-end apps, I think is a really great idea.
Cool. And then we also have people asking some like design system themed stuff, but we have another demo and sneak peek, which we can just leave on ice for 1 second till we get there. But also people asking, can we get our app live on custom domains? The answer is yes. It takes a little bit of persistence right now. So it's not something that we've invested a lot of time in making feel magical, but if you're happy with your Lovable project, you can deploy as we showed. And there's some documentation that we have on our website where you can just go through and you have to configure a few things, but you can go completely to production all of them.
I did this this week, and I was like, oh, this was actually quite simple. So you can, there's a button to click in the UI for that.
Cool. Well, we have a couple more demos as well, and then we can spend the rest of the stream on more Q&A.
Let's go.
The two demos, like Anton, do you want to talk us through making something full stack first?
Okay, I'll do that. So far we showed how to take a Figma design into something that is actually live as a website. And you already jumped the gun here maybe and added login to the website that you made. But let me now take another example, which is a dashboard that I've converted through exactly the flow that you showed, Steve, into a website. So here is the dashboard, the same design as a real website. So here's the preview link. It looks like this, and not currently nothing here is interactive. So now we want to make things interactive, and we even want to make, I'll even go all the way and instantly try to set this up with a backend. So here's the project in Lovable, and you can see the same thing has happened as what you showed, Steve. And I think there was even one small prompt here to put the images on the left to change it up a bit. I'm going to attempt, so this is a SaaS dashboard. It has lots of features like showing products and you selling, customers, and so on. I'll focus on the customers page here, and I want to show what's actually in a database, so show real data here with the customers. And how I do that is I need a backend, and when I need a backend, I need to set up and connect to a Supabase project. So here I prepared a completely new blank project called Dashboard.
And maybe just to explain briefly for the people in the crowd who don't know Supabase. So Supabase is a kind of backend as a service that lets you store data in databases. It also handles auth, so you can have like login pages and signups on your project. And it also supports edge functions, which are basically things that run in the cloud that call other services. And so you can use this to also integrate like OpenAI calls into your projects and things like this, and sort of build super complex applications.
And Supabase is a great product in itself. People who build products, like all of the Y Combinator companies almost use Supabase, or many of them. And as you said, it has lots of features that you can manually go in and change. But for now, I'm going to not touch what's in Supabase manually, but rather use the AI to set everything up. The only thing I've done is to connect Supabase, and now we should be good to go. I get some instructions of what I can do. I can log in data and backend endpoints for AI features, for example. I know the documentations, I don't need them. I'll ask for setting up a table where the customers are stored. And what I'm asking for as well, I'll zoom in here for the stream, is that we don't need, in this case, to set up any security or protection of the data. Anyone can now read the data in this case. So if I would be doing this for production use case, I would probably add login first and then protect the data with a login. But I'm specifically saying don't do that yet. Okay, so here's the code for setting up the database. And now in the beginning, I just click apply changes. If I already have a database, I probably want to make sure it doesn't say delete all data here, for example. But in this first case, I'll just go with it and see what happens. Okay, so now I think the data is in Supabase, and I'll just show the dashboard of the data in the databases. Here we have the customer database, and it has already created a lot of examples. So let's just ask it to show. Maybe it is already showing the data. No, let's.
I think because there was sample data in the Figma, which was then like static front end, I think it's reused that in.
Yeah.
So it feels like feels the same, right? But it's actually now coming from Supabase.
So you can also try the pagination buttons too. That's sometimes a fun demo, or sorting if it hooked up to sorting buttons.
That's a great idea. So what I want to do is I want to change this data in the database, and I can of course just do that manually by deleting this row, for example. Let's delete Catherine. But once this is done, and I'll have to check that it works, I will want to ask the AI to change up what data is in the database. And this might not work instantly. Let's see. I think it's reasonable. If I change Jacob Jones to Nad here, and I refresh.
Yeah, I'm right at the bottom.
You're here.
Nad
that works.
Yahoo, unfortunately. Thanks, Yahoo.
So mock email addresses. Okay, so now I'm just going to manipulate the database here with AI, which I think is a pretty simple workflow. This has already been a few minutes of this demo. What else do you think, Steve, I could change here?
So I think telling the AI to hook up this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So telling the AI to hook up the sort functionality is a fun one that I've played around with. It's pretty cool. It should be able to do it for us. You might want to tell to sort by name or whatever. It's nice. It's cool to see it clicking the buttons and the data change. I think it put up some phony UI, some phony functionality for the pagination now, which we can always come in and add to, even though there's not more pages today. What's really cool here, what we're seeing, I never thought about this. I never thought about manipulating data in the SQL database through the Lovable UI, like a purely backend function. Like I knew it could create tables, obviously, but I never thought about just like telling it like, hey, just change up the data. That's so cool in my opinion, because even just using SQL tools is tricky. And Supabase has good UIs and has AI for manipulating data, but there are just more steps and more things to learn. The fact that you just have a universal chat for front end and back end edits here is cool, and I knew that existed. I just never seen it used in such a way. It's kind of mind blowing. It's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about testing this as well is something like sorting is the type of thing that you waste so much time in Figma trying to get a feel for like how these interactions would work, because you end up with different frames with different mock data. You end up in component hell with like 25 different variants that are like hooked up with different like noodles of like prototype interactions, whatever. Whereas here you can be like, just give me some logic on this interface, and then I can click it, and then I can get a real feel for it. And so like I think it's actually like quicker, despite the fact it's also a real app. Just super awesome.
I love it. It's super cool seeing that sorting working too. Just click and sort. It feels like we've made a full app here in a couple minutes, like while live streaming, which is the hardest time. It's like somebody's like looking over your shoulder while you're coding, and someone's looking over your shoulder even while you're prompting. It's harder than usual. But we made an app here in a couple minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to ask also to be able to edit the rows in this table, but in the interest of time, I think I should wrap up this demo unless there's any questions from the audience that's worth taking a look at.
One interesting one that just came in, which is asking if you can select elements, which just lets us, Anton, if you could demo the select button, select feature.
Yeah, sure. So what do we want to do here? Like we could potentially delete this. Let's do that. So now I just pressed select, and then I selected some elements, and I ask for delete, and I did a typo, but I hope it understands what I intended to do.
Cool. And just in the interest of time, I think, Steve, you've got something else you want to show, which will speak to some of the design systems questions you were having. We could maybe spend a few minutes on that demo, and then just zoom into like any outstanding questions we have after that.
Sounds good. I'll stop my share here. I'll just point out that the deletion of the selected element works, and all of this code, which is now both backend code and the frontend code, can also easily be edited as a human in any of your editor of choice. So you can bring it down locally by using Git, or you can open it in a browser editor like this one. You need to be familiar with version control or learn it, but otherwise this is this is normal code that a human can easily maintain. That's it for the demo of the full stack part.
Cool.
It's beautiful.
And whilst you're just enabling a screen share, to everyone asking in the chat, like, how do I connect to AI services? We have another live stream tomorrow, actually, where Christian on our team and Harry, who's one of our early users, who's a designer as well, actually. Last week, they built a Spanish tutoring app. They built the front end for it. And tomorrow, they're going to use Replicate to integrate AI models into it to extend it. So if you're interested in that, come follow our Twitter, all the good stuff. And join the live stream tomorrow as well for hooking up to third-party AI services. And over to you, Steve.
Sounds awesome. Y'all can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something really cool that I just want to show an experiment we're running to get closer to that end state where we want to continuously iterate with AI and design, where AI is working directly with code because LLMs are fantastic with code. Code generation is the #1 use case people use LLMs for, even more than chat, believe that or not. There's a lot of coding people do with LLMs today. But we want to be able to work with the code by hand and with prompts, and we want to be able to design, and we want to seamlessly connect the two. So if you saw the launch video for Builder Lovable, you saw some of the CLI that we're introducing now and we'll bring to Lovable soon to push changes back. But the #1 piece of feedback we got was after this launch, and even after another sort of like AI preview we gave recently, is like, well, what happens when the code changes and I need to get that change in Figma so I can continue to iterate in Figma? So I want to show you something we're experimenting with. We call a live frame. So here on the right, this is the preview of an application built with Lovable. This could technically be any application. If you're an engineer, this could be your local host preview, your Next.js site, whatever. In this case, this is a local CRM app that I built earlier today. You can see I can interact with it. So I can edit this user, Wahoo. But you probably will notice something, which is as I'm going in and making changes, deleting, etc., Figma is updating as well. The idea here is to keep automatically your design in sync with the code and be able to make edits. So I can go in here and I can start editing the design. So maybe I want to change this button color. I don't like this blue anymore. I prefer some other shade. Maybe I want a more kind of V0 style black. And we can continue to edit. I can make whatever changes I want and go in and let's say also, I don't like that button color either. I'm going to remove that stroke and I'm going to make the fill black here as well. We can go and use this application here on the side. We're just browsing normal application. Hello, Steve at builder.io, Steve at hello.com, doesn't matter. Save. And we can see everything kind of working here and we're using it. The idea being, we don't want a separation. So imagine on the right, this is just Lovable. You just have Lovable on the right and you're building the app, and everything that changes in Lovable syncs automatically to Figma, including your design system as well. And anything you change in Figma syncs back to Lovable. Lovable can be directly to code in the case of Builder 2, but I think particularly magical in the use case of Lovable. And then being able to literally like, I don't have it. But if you've got some other design elements, you're like, oh, I want to have a promo banner, literally just drag it from Figma into the frame and just see that generate inside of the application. that in Lovable, or otherwise you can just continue to iterate with AI. This is just a glimpse of something we hope to launch in partnership and integration with Lovable later this year. And we hope to make it no longer a debate at all. Should I use Lovable or Code or Figma? Use them all. They're all in sync. Lovable edits go to Code. Code edits go to Figma. Figma edits go back to Lovable. It doesn't matter. You can all work together using the tools and preferences that you want. We're really looking for early feedback on this. Like, what is your sense? Is this the type of thing you're looking for? We're eager to kind of go deeper on the integration and send additional questions too. AKA, the reason we're demoing this today is because it's been something we've been talking about and working on, and it came up in feedback yesterday. Share more feedback, and we're eager to continue to go further in this direction and breaking down these boundaries and make it like so easy to bring your ideas to reality. It won't even be funny. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait for this. Like, super excited. Like, going back to what we were talking about earlier about the amount of time you waste just translating things. Like, if it's just instantly translated and you just choose the right tool to make the right kind of edit or change the thing how you want with the same source of truth, like, this feels awesome.
I love it. People are calling it, what was the one? Oh my God, there's so many chats going on. It's so hard to keep track of them. 360-degree two-way AI software engineer. I like that.
Yeah.
I love how we missed all the questions earlier, but now we don't have questions. We just have exclamation marks. But if people want to ask questions, we're like looking at the chat and we can pin the questions and talk through them in more detail as well.
I like the hype. The hype is fun. People called it outrageously amazing. Awesome. I'll take it.
Nad, what are you most excited about in starting to go straight from Figma?
I think I oscillate sometimes between like needing to just edit like the thing we already have, like an existing mature project, and wanting to feel things out and ideate in that context, and also just needing to sometimes, you know, take a piece of paper and like start from blank or whatever, depending on the type of problem I'm solving, just to not have that barrier anymore and be able to oscillate between them. Just feels like super empowering. Like it's nice to be able to pick the right kind of flow that I'll need for like the right kind of job. I think like that's what really excites me.
Cool.
Oh, not having to bug engineers to implement more changes as well. That's probably the other.
The handoff, right? The handoff is so time consuming. You just go from idea straight to production, almost. I'm curious, Steve. Did you have any interesting learnings building the Builder transformation plugin? Were you the one writing the code for that?
That's a good question. I made the first very bad version. I have also added features to it. The majority of work, I mean, we've got a whole team on it who's been grinding it out on it. The main learnings I would say is Figma is sort of a responsive design tool, but sort of not. And that sort of not is a very deep well of challenges. The sort of heuristics and the AI you have to use to sort of like figure out what is being implied by the design is a never-ending well of challenges, but one that actually has a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, or it has a bottom, so to speak. That's what's sort of exciting to me. It's like if you had seen GPT-3, I remember seeing cool demos and trying to use it myself, and I could not get it to work. It would just output, like, it would just talk in circles, and it just didn't make sense. GPT 3.5, which was not, it was so like not different. It wasn't even a major version number, but it just worked so much better because the core was there. Outputting the next token was there. They just kind of had to change it to a question answer format. That's what's intuitive to people, whether it's a UX, you know, the user interface, or an API. And then it works like magic. And that's what we're like starting to see. Even Figma to Code a year ago, with us or otherwise, had a lot more challenges that were unsolved, a lot more like sharp corners. And that list of sharp corners is shrinking fastly, just like you're seeing the barrier for going from ideas to applications is shrinking rapidly. So all these like rapid shrinking points are really the accumulation of solving lots of individual problems. So I mentioned like using AI to identify what should be images, AI to identify responsive breakpoints, we even have AI to understand if your auto layout choices were not good. It's hard to do that perfectly, but there are cases where auto layout is actually just set up wrong and we have to ignore it. Oh, cat cameo.
Hello. Yes.
Always.
I'm glad my dog is not here. He just shows up too. He can jump surprisingly high for a small dog. But anyway, there's a million things there, but it's exciting because once you break down enough of those things, it opens up all these use cases. So you saw the CLI demo, you saw the Figma, Keep Figma in Sync demo. And I think the other thing that's like really clear to me too, that actually addresses something that's often on people's minds, these types of conversations, is there's a clear, there's like a clear new workflow emerging that just enhances on everyone. What I mean by that is we use AI a lot to build our own products. Where's the AI really, really good? It's really, really good at the front end. It's like we rarely write CSS internally. Between Figma to code and tools like Lovable for building out the front end and features and all of that, there is a lot of cases where we would throw engineering time at that we put the engineering time on generally harder problems. There are always hard problems. And the more it becomes easier to build the easy to medium difficulty things, the more all the product differentiation becomes the hard things. So some people look at us taking what would be junior to mid-level engineering work and automating it, and they go, engineering jobs are going to go away. Not even remotely. Engineers start working on more and more complex things. And in my experience, like running engineering teams, those are the challenging, exciting things. I used to run a team of engineers at an e-commerce company. And we just new landing pages, new button colors were the things we were doing daily. And I kind of senior engineers, they hated that work. They were so like, oh, we just changed the button color again last week. It's like, yeah, the A/B test failed. Like, why are we doing it? It's marketing. Marketing, you have to test things. You don't know what's going to work yet. And engineers don't like to do that. They like to build things that last, and they like to have ever harder and harder problems. In fact, one of the biggest challenges I always face in managing engineering teams is people always want meatier problems. And sometimes the work is just like, sorry, you got to change the button color, or the copy's got to change here. And when people see AI updating copy or hooking up Supabase, they're like, my job's going to be gone. That is like 1% of your job, and that's the 1% you hate. And now you're going to spend more time on the exciting stuff. And when companies are hiring engineers, each engineer has more value because half the work's automated, the easy stuff, and the other half is deep, challenging, and it's going to further differentiate you. So rather than each company building modals a million times, company A is going to build the unique technology that only company A has. Company B is going to build the unique tech that only company B has. It's better ROI for every business, and it's better ROI for users. As a user, you don't have to wait for companies to spend all this time building modals. You get to wait for them building new AI features, new advanced capabilities, new stuff that actually makes your life better. That's the type of thing that we always play with internally. What should AI do? What should humans do? What should the balance be? And I find that the more you experiment with these tools, even if you're sitting there and you're like, hey, I'm not ready to lose Lovable in production, you should use it anyway. Or I'm not ready to use design to code in production. You should try it anyway, because
100%.
A designer, product manager, engineer, or whatever, who's really good at leveraging AI is quite accelerated compared to someone who's not. And that's not to say AI is the best choice for everything every time, but that's why you need to experiment, because you'll know. I just know a whole class of things that AI will do faster. I don't even make a ticket. I have the AI do it, and great.
Yeah.
I know a whole class of things that humans should do. Yeah.
Yeah, no. What does it cost to try it?
What do you mean? Oh, to try Builder, it's free. Lovable,
it's free,
too.
right?
Just go try
it. You can try it for free as well. So it's just try it out if you haven't done that yet, I think.
Yeah.
But we're closing up on time here. Nad, do you want to say what we should do before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I've lost my notes, so I need to check my notes. But I mean, really, like the point of today was to sort of showcase what we've built. So we can go from like Figma to a full stack app, a real app with AI. So using the Build.io plugin and then using Lovable to take over from there. We gave like a little preview of some of the things we have in the works. So if, for example, the live frame looked super exciting to you, let us know. Like tweet at us. We're reading everything. Everything's kind of nothing is concrete yet. So like feedback is like honestly super welcome. Yeah, and like get started for free on both Builder and on Lovable. Do either of you have any sort of summarizing remarks from your side?
I think people are probably tired of hearing me rant. So I'll just say this is super awesome and you should try it. And this was extremely fun.
Yeah, it was great to jump on this as my first live stream. And I want to echo what you talked about in the beginning with Agile. Like the true Agile is when you just go straight from idea like all the way to like, okay, should we want to ship this? Do you want to ship this? And I've seen so many designers and product managers being like, before I had to like first grab a designer to be able to show what I mean, and then to get an engineer to make it interactive. And now they're like, no, I just prompted everything out, and I did everything to be able to show what I mean, and that's just build it with Figma or like AI somehow is the way to go in the future.
It's going to be a blast. Rock and roll and try it out. Build cool stuff and tweet at us. The cool stuff you built. We'll see it. We'll maybe even potentially showcase it too.
Yes, and this is, as you know, this is just the beginning. Steve, you spoke about a lot of the things to come, and this is how diverse the AI will ever be, and it's getting faster and better every day.
Totally. Even this integration too. This is the worst the integration will be. It'll be the worst builder ever is, the worst Lovable ever is. I'm so a year from now. I wish I could just fast forward to a year. Things are going to be really crazy. So anyway, get your hands in and try it out.
Yeah.
Give us your feedback.
And I'm reliably informed that we have 2,500 people watching, so it feels rude to stop. So I don't know if we want to take any more questions, if you both have time, or if we should just wrap.
Personally, I'm late for dinner, so otherwise I'd like to stay.
I'm late for a meeting.
Personally.
Why don't we do this again sometime? I like to live stream my platforms. We could do on the Lovable side. We could do more cool demos. We could talk about the future. We can do some targeted things. We'll be back. This is not the first time ever. So thank you all. Your enthusiasm definitely encourages us to keep going, build a deeper integration, does more powerful things, live stream more cool use cases, and rock and roll, build cool stuff.
The best.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks so much, everybody.